Should they be required for new pilots and for continuing veteran drone pilots?
My unpopular opinion, yes. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching and listening to the PropsClear podcast. I'm your host, Jillian Angeline. We're talking all about drones and about improving public perception and safety surrounding the unmanned aircraft industry. These episodes are for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only, so none of this constitutes legal advice. Fasten your seatbelts and let's get started. Today's guest is Kyle Nordfors. You heard from him last week, and this week we're talking all about safety in the skies and before you take off. Again, he is the UAS Chairman with the Mountain Rescue Association, the drone team coordinator at the Weber County Sheriff's Office, and a 737 captain with Alaska Airlines. All right, Kyle, thank you so much for joining me again. So excited to have you back on the PropsClear podcast. And as I said in my introduction, the goal as I work to increase public perception about drones safety is at the forefront of this kind of discussion. And you and I spoke off camera after our first episode about the importance of safety in aviation, whether it be manned or unmanned, and you've experienced in both. So talk with me about what you think people should know about the importance of aeronautical decision making and what maybe isn't happening out there right now.
Well, thanks for having me back. And this is a subject that I am particularly passionate about because there is definitely a huge disconnect between the manned aviation world and the unmanned aviation world.
Mhm.
And a lot of times you'll hear people quote the some statistic claiming that unmanned aviation is so much safer than the history of manned aviation. And
Mhm.
that argument is kind of a flawed argument just to start with, just given the nature of both um, types of aviation. But
Mhm.
when it comes to aviation, we all fall underneath the same umbrella and we all learn from each other. So unmanned aviation has had the 100 years of experience that we've learned in manned aviation. And there are certain things that we do in manned aviation that is just completely lost in the drone world. And if we did a better job in the manned world and also in the unmanned world of where we're trying to merge the two industries together so that we can learn from each other and grow together because we are truly just one big happy family. And there are a number of things that we do in the manned world that I think will be vastly very
Mhm.
important and handy in the unmanned world. And I appreciate you allowing this time to be able to kind of talk about this.
Now we were talking about that the collision between the Robinson 44 helicopter and the drone. You and I were both talking about how, especially if you're flying alone and you're doing a project or something like that, there are times where you're going to have to look down at the screen to make sure that you're getting the right camera angle, the right shot, and sounds like the investigation is still ongoing at the moment in that situation. And if someone hasn't heard about it, earlier this year, a helicopter collided with a drone at about 180 feet from what I had seen in some of the news reports. And it caused about $60,000 in damage to the helicopter. And what had happened, and maybe you can, continue this, but what I'd seen through one of the reports, I think it was through Fox 35 Orlando, because it was in the Daytona Beach area, that the pilot said that, or at least the reports said that the pilot said that pilot may have looked down for a brief moment and he didn't see the drone anymore when he looked back up. What are your thoughts from a UAS perspective, because you fly UAS as well as planes?
It's very hard to Monday morning quarterback that situation, especially as the investigation's ongoing. And my thoughts and my heart goes out to both pilots in that situation because there are times if both pilots are doing everything 100% correct, accidents still and can happen. So it's really hard for me to speak out to that particular accident as I wasn't there. However, there are certain things that we do or we should be
Mhm.
doing in aviation that might help prevent some of those potential accidents. And even in general aviation, I know that
Mhm.
you will probably have a lot of viewers that participate in general aviation, flying single engine aircraft, rotor helicopters, and the like. But even still, in those in general aviation, a lot of these procedures that we study in
Mhm.
commercial aviation would be very beneficial to everybody else as well. And you talked about it briefly, aeronautical decision making.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, as you get into that, crew resource management, CRM. And then you can even take it a step further with threat and error management. One of the things that we do in the airlines, of course, every quarter, we have to go through different trainings and we study specifically CRM and how
Mm-hmm.
we're able to better our situational awareness so that any potential threat that might come up, we will already talked about it, acknowledged it, and know how to mitigate it and avoid that potential threat from becoming an accident. So if we were talking about, a situation that's similar to that accident where the UAS operator
Mm-hmm.
was operating close to an airport,
Mm-hmm.
if you if we're in that situation and if you're with your crew or you're with your visual observer or just anybody else that's close by, you can actually talk about those things. Hey, we're going to be
Mm-hmm.
operating relatively close to this airport. What are the potential threats with that? Well, we might have some aircraft, some manned aviation aircraft that are going to be coming into our airspace. All right. So, how can we mitigate that threat so that we know how to handle it once that threat presents itself? And then you talk about the different maneuvers, the different things you might be able to do. Well, if I'm going to be heads down flying my drone because that's required of me to get this shot for however long
Mm-hmm.
it takes, I need to make sure my visual observer is not only watching my drone, but also observing the airspace. In addition to that, what's another way that you might be able to mitigate that threat? Well, monitoring the Common Traffic Advisory frequency, the CTAF, or listening to the tower frequency if they have a tower
Mm-hmm.
frequency. Trying to think of all the different potential threats that might be coming your way, and then how to mitigate them so that it doesn't turn into an accident.
And we did something similar when I was with when I took a course at Valmont and we were learning how to inspect on transmission lines. We were doing it near a busy road in the Valmont facility. So we talked before we even lifted anything off. We talked about all those threats in the area. The propane tank that was nearby, we're going to have to fly next to. The birds and the migratory birds that were nearby, or the bird sanctuary that was nearby. We had to protect all those different areas and make sure that the noise didn't hurt the wildlife and it didn't impact the people that were walking the crosswalk, and we need to acknowledge all of those things before we lift it off. But the one thing I wasn't sure about is if there was or was not a visual observer in the situation in Florida. I didn't see that mentioned. But do you think there should be a visual observer requirement for something like that in every single situation? Is that something you'd like to see?
It's hard to say that there should be a blanket rule or regulation that
Hmm.
encompasses that. As I think it was with Beth in one of your previous podcasts, you talked about how the regulations are written in blood, and unfortunately, that's a quite literal statement that many of our regulations in aviation, when it comes to the federal aviation regulations, are written in blood because people did die in order for some of those regulations to come about, and we certainly do not want that to happen in the UAS world. And
No.
so, what we can do is learn from all the different past mistakes and analyze them, study them, and see what we need to do as operators, as pilots, to make sure that said things don't happen again. Crew resource management helps in all of that. Crew
Hmm.
resource management was started by the airlines back in the 80s, and it was first
Hmm.
brought on by
That's
United
relatively
Airlines.
new then. Wow.
Yes, it is,
80s, huh?
in
Wow.
the 80s. And United was the very first airline to put that out as part of their official training. Once the
Huh.
FAA noticed that, saw and observed it, they mandated it for all the other commercial Part 121 operators. And so, what is crew resource management exactly? It's mostly the simple way of thinking about it is that you're using all of your resources that are available to you, and you're
Hmm.
using those resources to accomplish your number one goal. And whether you're trying to, or whether you're piloting an airliner, a glider, helicopter, or a
Hmm.
UAS, your number one goal, your only goal as a pilot in command, is the safe operation of that aircraft. It is not to get the shot. It is not
Hmm.
to fly through or do whatever. It is the safe operation of that aircraft, so that when you from takeoff to landing, that flight is conducted in a safe manner. That is it. And so then you need to employ all these measures from crew resource management, threat and error management, to
Hmm.
be able to aid you in that goal of the safe operation of that aircraft.
And there are certainly times in my career where I've said, I'm not going to lift off today because it's too windy or because of this, that, or like, multiple reasons. But most of the time, it's like weather is always a factor. Like, this is not going to work in the situation. And that is a form of crew resource management. Some of the, I think it used to be called Aloft. Now I think it's called Air Control, the app. And when you open it up and you click the fly button, they go through a checklist. And that checklist includes, like, how are you feeling today? Like all those, like even the simplest things of like, did you get enough sleep or how are you feeling? Like you may not always have the best answer for it, but it makes you think twice when you have to actually click a button in order to move forward.
Right. And it goes a little bit further than that. Of course, when we take our Part 107, we learn that you can't have any type of alcohol in your system,
Mm,
but there's also over the counter drugs that that you might have taken. Any type of antihistamine that makes you
mhm,
drowsy, anything like that needs to go into that checklist. Have I taken anything? Do I have a cold? So I took an antihistamine that it might impair any of my judgment. You mentioned
mm,
checklists. Checklists are a vital thing when it comes to all forms of aviation, including UAS. So, a little background on what we do in the airlines. And the only reason why I'm bringing the airlines up so much is just because everything we do is operated around safety.
mm.
And since there is very little safety taught in the UAS world, that's one of the main reasons why I'm bringing it up. Just trying to bring forth the experience that has already been learned in aviation already.
You think there needs to be more taught, more safety? Do you think safety should be discussed more in
I
the UAS
absolutely
world?
do. I don't. My personal bias is that the Part 107 doesn't go far enough. It is not hard enough. It doesn't teach enough in order to educate these commercial drone operators the very
Hmm.
nature of what the bigger aviation picture is my personal opinion.
Hmm.
I know that's not a very popular opinion amongst those that are just drone operators. But I think the accidents that we've had or near misses that we've had near airports signifies that there is a lacking in education when it comes to operating near airports and other aircraft. If you read through some of these posts or comments, whether it be on YouTube or Facebook, when it comes, commenting on these accidents, it's very apparent that the average drone operator is woefully uneducated when it comes to safety and aviation safety.
Mm,
So, what we do in the airlines when it comes to our checklist, before
mm,
we even start into a checklist, what we do is we call it a TPC briefing. TPC stands for threats, our plan, and any other considerations. So,
mm,
we'll go through those different things first. First, we talk about our threats. Are we flying at night? Is there weather around? Um, are there other people around or any kind of considerations or things that might add an additional threat to our flight? Is there icing conditions? Is it raining?
mhm,
Is this a red eye flight? Are we tired?
mm,
In addition, even before all of that, we have to declare ourselves fit for duty, and we do that. It's an official form that we do with the FAA. But
mhm,
once we just declare ourselves fit for duty, we go into our TPC briefing, and then we
mm,
go through the actual plan of our flight. And we can do this in the UAS world as well. Well, the purpose of today's flight is that we're going to go up and inspect this particular power line.
mhm,
This particular power line that we're flying is kind of in the fields of where some farmers are or some farms, and it might we might have some crop dusters that are going to be coming around, or you might be in an area where there's a lot of manned aviation that doing their training, where they're going to be
mm,
doing chandelles or turns around a point. So we need to make sure we watch out for them. There might be some migratory waterfowl in the area. All things to consider.
mhm,
And how are we going to plan our way around those potential threats? After the entire briefing's done, then we go into any other considerations. Is there anything else that we think we might have missed? Okay, we do have some spectators up over here. They're probably always, spectators always want to come up and see
mm,
what the drone operator's doing, especially if you're flying a drone with a thermal camera. They're always asking, hey, can you flip it into thermal? Let me see what's going on there to interrupt your flight. And the easy way to think about it when you're disrupting a legal FAA authorized flight, meaning someone operating a drone under Part 107 or any kind of flight, even if it's recreational, if someone comes up and interrupts that flight, it's the same thing if someone interrupts a flight on an airliner. So you need to have somebody else to, or a means to keep those spectators away from you. So crew resource management, who are you going to call? Do you have someone you can call to ask questions to if you don't know the answer to something? Do you have somebody around to help keep those spectators away? What are your possible escape maneuvers if a bald eagle comes over and takes interest in your drone, which
Because
does
birds have
happen?
taken interest in drones.
Yes, very
Yeah.
much. So I guess my big point here is that there is a lot to learn in the
Mhm.
history of aviation, that we as drone operators can take to our daily operations to help raise that level of safety, so that we're not having to write more regulations in blood.
So then, if that's the case, and you think Part 107 is not doing enough to address all of those concerns, the TPC concerns that you just mentioned, do you think the FAA should update Part 107? I know that may not necessarily be a positive viewpoint either, but do you think the FAA should make updates? Because I can say, I mean, I know we talked about crew resource management. You know, we had to study that. We had to study aeronautical decision making. There weren't a ton of questions on the test for that, but there definitely was a consideration. But I mean, the lengths that it sounds like you think unmanned pilots should go to are not being addressed at the moment. What needs to change now?
The FAA, they're full of great people. A lot of them are aviators retired from one industry or the other, and the UAS industry has just absolutely exploded. It has been
Mhm.
going so fast and advancing so fast that the FAA unfortunately has been trying to play catch up the whole time. And I
Mhm.
think the 107 was a great start. Um, uh, but I think my personal opinion is that it doesn't go far enough. Too many people study for the 107 just to pass it, and once they pass it, they dump everything. There's not a lot of continuing education. The requirement of doing the recurrent training every
Every 2 years.
24, yeah, it's not enough in my opinion.
And
I
you're right. There are times where I've gone out. I'll flip through the checklist, quickly because I'm on deadline as a journalist sometimes. I just want to get up, get the shots, get it down, and keep moving with my day. I mean, I feel like a lot of people who are doing things quickly can admit that. But of course, like safety is always on top of my mind. If I'm told about a manned aircraft, if it beeps about a manned aircraft, like I'm going to lower it. I'm going to make sure that I'm well within. I mean, safety is always on top of my mind when I'm doing something like that, especially when you feel like you're sending your baby up into the air.
Yeah. A lot of times, so I instruct a lot of different 107 classes to different law enforcement agencies, and I've been out in the field with a lot of these law enforcement officers, and unfortunately, they don't have the education, or they haven't been exposed to a lot of these different resources or the different processes, or just the concept of aeronautical decision making, how it is different. They will prioritize the arrest over the safe operation of the flight. Um, and as a pilot in command, your only responsibility is that safe operation of that aircraft. And if anything else jeopardizes that, then you need to land the aircraft immediately. So I do think that there does need to be more education. I mean, as professional pilots, commercial pilots, we get this quarterly. We get it quarterly, and I don't see any reason why, if you consider yourself a professional and a commercial UAS operator, then we should all hold ourselves to a higher safety standard and educate ourselves as aviators. That's the history. That's the what aviators do. They're always expanding, always exploring, always trying to educate themselves so that they can learn more. Aviation is a fantastic field. It's amazing, and the more you learn, it becomes addicting, and you just want to learn more and more and more. But unfortunately, to drone operators, there's not a lot of resources yet when it comes to these concepts.
So, what do you think? Where do you think these resources can be created, or what do you recommend?
There are a lot of flight schools out there that, well, not a lot. There are a few flight schools out there that offer some of these courses, like Pilot Institute. Greg over
Mhm.
there at Pilot Institute has done a great job. Of course, he being a manned aircraft pilot himself, and he
Mhm.
he takes pilots from ground zero all the way up to be a commercial airline pilot. So they're those kind of things or resources that are available to you. The FA on the FAA safety website, they also offer additional courses and trainings that you can do that are free. You just on I can't remember if it's safety.faa.gov or the opposite, but it's one of them where if you just Google FAA safety, then that will be good enough. But there's a lot of courses on there that talk about crew resource management and
Yeah.
aeronautical decision making. So to help further your education, but of course they're not required. So very, 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 very few people actually do them.
Should they be required for new pilots and for continuing veteran drone pilots?
My unpopular opinion, yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay. I see your point. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, like you said, you study all this deep information for that Part 107 test. The minute you're done with it, you get the license and you're like, okay, like, yes, there are things to think about, but a lot of times the DJI drones and some other drones, like, they do a lot of the work for you. So you don't have to worry about, how high are you? The drone tells you how high, different things like that.
Right. There, I I guess I also have I'm on the other side of the fence as well.
Hmm.
So I can't even begin to tell you how many times I've come in to land at LAX
Hmm.
in my airliner, where on short final you're flying right over the SoFi Stadium, and on
Hmm.
top of it's where the LA Rams and the Chargers
Hmm.
play, and on top of that stadium they have an electrical billboard up on top. So then as you're flying over top, they have all these advertisements and it's very pretty. It's pretty cool. But I can't even begin to tell you how many times I've seen drones flying around doing a turnaround of point up on top of that stadium. And
When you're landing.
when I'm landing, it's
Oh,
much easier to
shoot.
see them at night because you see their little lights on there. But yeah, we do see them. And so I've also heard um, some ignorant comments about how airline pilots aren't, even when we're traveling so fast, we can't see or you'd be able to tell that it's a drone, and that just simply isn't true.
Mm.
When we're coming into land at those altitudes, if we see a mylar balloon, not only can we tell it's a mylar balloon compared to any type of other balloon,
Mhm.
but sometimes we can actually tell if it's a get well soon balloon or a
Oh my
happy
gosh.
birthday balloon, if it's facing the right way.
Yeah.
We're not flying all that fast. F1
Wow.
cars are driving faster than we are at those lower altitudes where we see
Have you ever
these
had to
things.
abort a takeoff because of a drone nearby that stadium?
No,
Okay.
um, no, not, but I have seen them as I'm coming into land.
How do you feel about the remote ID? Will you, as a manned airline pilot, be able to see that drone on radar or anything like that with it
No,
being?
no,
You will
it
not.
doesn't.
Okay.
No, it won't affect us at all. But I have mixed feelings on remote ID. I think it is relatively a needed. It is a needed item, and we should
Hmm.
have it. However,
Yeah.
I don't think that the public should have access to it for security reasons. I think it should be available and accessible by law enforcement and federal agencies, and not
Hmm.
necessarily Joe Schmo that wants to go and harass the pilot because they learn about remote ID, and so they're out there being their own personal enforcers of what they about laws they know nothing about. And I have a friend. He's a YouTuber in Florida, out of Tampa, and he's been harassed by people for flying his drone legally, and to the point where it almost gets into fights. So I think remote ID is a good thing. However, I think it's gone about it the wrong way, where I don't think the public should have access to it to know the location of where the pilot is.
Hmm. So, what kind of tips do you have for veteran pilots and for new pilots? It sounds like just educate yourself as much as possible, either on the FAA safety website or through, pilot schools or air schools that they may have nearby wherever they live.
Um, so we get complacent. We as pilots,
Hmm.
to be a pilot, there are certain personality traits that are pretty predominant when it comes to pilots, and I think that goes along with all type of pilots, including drone pilots.
Hmm.
So a lot of times we get a little, we've launched this drone literally 1,000 times. We know how it works. We know we get a little complacent. We
Hmm.
might put safety on the back burner.
Mm.
I would encourage people to, like you said, educate themselves on some of these aeronautical, these aviation concepts, safety concepts, but also to be a little bit more mindful about safety before you even launch. Take a look around, take a deep breath, analyze what the potential
Take a deep
threats
breath. I
are.
like that. Yeah,
Take
that's
it,
smart.
but analyze the situation, the environment that you're flying in.
Hmm.
Um, are you flying in restricted airspace? Now, contrary to popular belief, there's a reason why airspace is built the way it is. And just
Absolutely.
because you don't understand why it is that way or you don't
Hmm.
agree with it doesn't mean that it's not appropriate. Now, obeying the laws like that is incredibly important.
Hmm.
And getting your Lance authorizations or contacting the tower and going through your waiver process. It all exists for a reason.
Hmm.
And if you don't understand it, well, that doesn't mean that it's not there for a good reason.
Yeah.
Very few of the regulations in aviation put forth by the FAA are pointless. They all
Hmm.
have a reason to them, and understanding that reason will make you a better aviator.
I like that. I know the FAA also recommends going to the Know Before You Fly. They have a Know Before You Fly campaign. That Know Before You Fly is a Facebook page. You can scroll through and see their posts about, recommendations or about registering your drone and some of the things that they recommend as well.
Well,
So
and
I
the
know that
FAA
that's important.
has they have an email that if you just go to your drone zone or whatever, they have a very
Hmm.
simple email. You email them, and the FAA will get back to you in a very quick
Hmm.
time. They're very
Great.
approachable. They're very nice. They're good people over there at the FAA, and sincerely, every single so as in my career, my 20+ year career flying planes, I've had plenty of run-ins with the FAA. We have to go get our medicals every 6 months to be a
Hmm.
captain for an airline, and we have to deal with the FAA constantly, whether it be our
Hmm.
check rides, line checks, um, it just uh, all the time. But they are so I've interacted with a lot of different FAA representatives, and they are sincerely good people. They don't
Hmm.
want to bust you. They don't want to enforce the rules. All they want is for you to be safe. They want you in the air
Yeah.
enjoying aviation. They want you to learn and grow, but they do not want to bust you. They are not the police. So if you have a question, reach out to the FAA. They'll help you. And if you have a goal or something that you want to accomplish, they will help you figure out the means by which to accomplish that goal. They are good people.
I believe that, and I appreciate you explaining that. And I think that that is something that I've understood. Going to conferences, talking to people, that they have the best interest in mind, and the reason why it may take longer to do something from a federal perspective is one because everything takes a little bit longer from a federal perspective, and two because they want to make sure that they get it right the first time. From the way that I've seen it, so I think that's important.
Well, and well, if they do make a decision, it sets a precedence. So they have
Mhm.
to be careful about that going forward. And it's not just drone operators that they're trying to protect.
Yeah.
They're also trying to protect those that are in other aircraft. They're trying to protect the people on the ground. And
Mhm.
so they do have a very big job. Another reason why things might go a little bit slow with the FAA is because they're woefully understaffed,
Mhm.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
Um, and I would also encourage people to go to your local air traffic control tower. They
Mhm.
allow tours. Go
Hmm.
up there, talk to the air traffic control tower, get their perspective as to how they see drones interacting in the national airspace system. And
Mhm.
what can you do as a drone operator to help make their job easier and better?
Yeah.
Um, so go, meet the air traffic controllers, whether it be in a big class Bravo airspace like
Mhm.
at Newark, JFK, LAX, DEN, or they'll allow tours. Or
Oh
if you're
wow.
even in a small single, class Delta airport, get up in there and talk to them. You'll learn a lot.
Well, that sounds like a fun project. I like to hear that. I may have to reach out
Go do
to
it.
my
You'll
Newark and
enjoy it.
see if they'll see if they'll talk to me. That'd be fascinating.
Oh,
Wow.
they will
Even
talk
if
to
it's
you.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. Well, thank you so much for your time, Kyle. I really appreciate it. And these are great tips. If anyone has questions or suggestions for Kyle or for other aviation experts about safety, you can email me, angelswings.jillian@gmail.com. That's ANGELSWINGS.JILLIAN@gmail.com. Thanks for watching.